LeBron James only thinks about himself and ruins team chemistry, said 76ers head coach Doc Rivers confidently on ESPN's NBA Today program. Sitting at the other end of the studio, LeBron James smiled slightly upon hearing Rivers' words. "Do you really think that, Doc?" he asked. Rivers nodded. "Statistics don't lie, LeBron. Players' performance drops when they're on your teams." Just as the discussion was about to heat up, program host Malika Andrews' facial expression suddenly changed. "Gentlemen, before we continue with the broadcast," she said, looking at the tablet in front of her, "we just received a video from an anonymous viewer. This footage shows Doc Rivers talking about LeBron during a private meeting with 76ers players. Welcome to the Famous Stories channel. Whatever city you're watching from, please write it in the comments below. If you're curious about unknown and never-before-heard truths, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like our videos." At ESPN's New York studios, preparations had been completed for that day's episode of NBA Today. The program was taking place in the middle of the NBA season, during a period when the playoff race in the Eastern and Western conferences was heating up. But today's broadcast promised much more than an ordinary basketball discussion. Producers had begun planning this confrontation months ago. Doc Rivers and LeBron James would come face-to-face on the same program. Everyone in the basketball world knew about the Cold War between the two legends. In recent months, Rivers had spoken about James's negative effects on team chemistry across various media platforms. LeBron had responded with a few veiled references on social media. Today, finally, the two figures would confront each other directly. The studio was bustling with activity an hour before the program began. Camera operators were making final adjustments, sound technicians were completing microphone tests, and the lighting team was working to provide ideal illumination. Producers were rushing from one room to another, checking every detail of the program flow. Program director Sarah Chen was giving final instructions to her team while adjusting her headset. "Today is going to be a very important broadcast. I want to capture the tension between Rivers and James. Camera 2, catch Rivers' reactions when LeBron is speaking. Camera 3, vice versa. I don't want to miss this confrontation." The anticipation for this episode had been building for weeks. Sports talk radio couldn't stop discussing it. Social media was filled with predictions and hot takes. Stephen A. Smith had devoted an entire segment of First Take that morning to previewing the potential fireworks between Rivers and James. Skip Bayless had tweeted, "Finally someone with the courage to tell LeBron the truth to his face. Can't wait for Doc Rivers to keep that same energy when King James is sitting across from him." ESPN executives knew this confrontation would generate massive ratings. They had been promoting the episode heavily, running teaser clips of Rivers' past criticisms of James, alongside LeBron's greatest career highlights. The network's marketing team had crafted the tagline "Face-to-Face, the Coach versus the King," which appeared on billboards in major cities and across social media platforms. The stakes were high for both men. For Rivers, this was an opportunity to establish himself as an uncompromising truth-teller in a media landscape that often tiptoed around criticizing James. For LeBron, it was a chance to address one of his most vocal critics directly and defend his legacy as a team player and leader. In the makeup room, LeBron James was getting his final touches. Despite being 39 years old, the 6'9" superstar was still at the peak of his career. Playing his 20th season in a Lakers uniform, James was averaging 27.8 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 8.3 assists this season. With a career filled with 4 championships, 4 MVP awards, and countless records, it sometimes surprised him that he was still subject to criticism. "Have you heard Rivers' comments from the past few weeks?" asked the makeup artist while applying powder to James's face. LeBron smiled slightly. "It's part of the job. I've been here for 20 years. I've heard all kinds of criticism. I'm curious about Doc's opinion. We'll have a chance to discuss it face-to-face today." James was no stranger to public criticism. Throughout his 2-decade career, he had been scrutinized for everything from the decision to leave Cleveland for Miami, to his activism off the court, to his playing style. He had developed a thick skin and a strategic approach to handling public disputes. His inner circle had advised him to stay calm and measured during today's confrontation, knowing that his composure would speak volumes. The makeup artist worked carefully around James's beard. "My son plays high school basketball," she said. "He models his game after you, always looking to make the right pass, being a team player." LeBron nodded appreciatively. "That's what the game is all about, making your teammates better." As the makeup artist finished, LeBron's agent Rich Paul entered the room. "You good?" he asked, his voice low and concerned. LeBron and Paul had been together since the beginning of James's career, growing from humble beginnings in Akron, Ohio to become one of the most powerful player-agent partnerships in sports. "I'm good," LeBron replied confidently. "Doc's entitled to his opinion. I'll just speak my truth." Paul nodded, knowing his client had handled far more challenging situations throughout his career. "Remember, this isn't about winning an argument, it's about setting the record straight." On the other side of the studio, Doc Rivers was completing his own preparations. The 61-year-old experienced coach was one of basketball's most respected figures with over 1,000 NBA victories and one championship. Now coaching the Phoenix Suns after his final season with the Philadelphia 76ers, Rivers had expressed his views about LeBron on various platforms in recent months. Rivers was checking his phone while sipping a coffee. A few minutes later, his assistant entered the studio. "Doc, are you ready? The program starts in 10 minutes. Rivers nodded. "Yes, I'm ready." "Has LeBron arrived?" "He's entering the studio right now. Malika Andrews and the other guests have also taken their places." Rivers put his phone in his pocket and took a deep breath. He had already planned how to act and what to say when the cameras turned on. Throughout his coaching career, he had participated in thousands of press conferences and television programs. Today would be no different. Rivers had built his post-coaching media career on being outspoken. In a landscape filled with bland takes and generic analysis, his willingness to criticize even the biggest stars had made him a valuable commodity. His comments about LeBron's negative impact on team chemistry had generated significant attention and had led to this very confrontation. Part of him wondered if he had gone too far, but another part believed firmly in his assessment. As he walked toward the studio, Rivers mentally reviewed his talking points. He had statistics ready to support his claims. The decline in efficiency of players like Chris Bosh and Kevin Love after joining LeBron, the high turnover rate of coaches on James's teams, the way offenses became LeBron-centric at the expense of established systems. He felt confident in his position, even knowing he would be stating it directly to James's face. In the studio, program host Malika Andrews was making her final preparations. The 28-year-old Andrews had quickly become one of the most respected figures in NBA media. She was known for her ability to ask the right questions and manage the program during critical moments. Today, she would be managing perhaps one of the most challenging programs of her career. 5 minutes, called the director. Andrews reviewed her notes once more. She had prepared carefully for this confrontation, researching the history between Rivers and James, preparing follow-up questions, and planning how to maintain control if the discussion became too heated. As one of the few women hosting major sports programs, she knew the spotlight would be on her ability to manage this high-profile confrontation between two of basketball's biggest personalities. "Remember," said the executive producer, leaning over her desk, "let them go at it, but don't let it get out of hand. This could be one of our highest-rated segments of the year." Andrews nodded. She understood the delicate balance between creating compelling television and maintaining journalistic integrity. The viewers wanted fireworks, but she was determined to ensure the conversation remained substantive and respectful. LeBron James and Doc Rivers finally entered the studio. The two basketball legends made brief eye contact, then shook hands professionally. After a superficial exchange of courtesies, they sat in separate chairs. James was wearing a navy blue suit and white shirt, while Rivers had opted for a gray suit and black shirt. The tension between them was palpable, though both maintained professional demeanors. James sat with his typical relaxed confidence, legs crossed, hands folded in his lap. Rivers appeared slightly more rigid, sitting straight-backed in his chair, occasionally adjusting his tie. 30 seconds, announced the director. As Andrews looked over her final notes, the other guests in the studio, former NBA star Vince Carter and ESPN analyst Kendrick Perkins, took their places. Carter had played against both James and teams coached by Rivers, offering a valuable perspective as a recently retired player. Perkins, a former teammate of James in Cleveland, was known for his outspoken defense of LeBron, setting up a potential ally for James in the coming discussion. The production assistant counted down 5, 4, 3, 2, and silently pointed as the red light on the camera illuminated. The lights brightened, the red on-air lamp lit up, and NBA Today began. "Welcome, I'm Malika Andrews," said the host, smiling at the camera. "Welcome to this special episode of NBA Today. Today we have two special guests in our studio, Phoenix Suns head coach Doc Rivers and Los Angeles Lakers superstar LeBron James." The cameras showed the two figures both responding with professional smiles. The split-screen shot emphasized the contrast between them. Rivers, the veteran coach with decades of NBA experience, and James, the ageless superstar, still dominating the league in his 20th season. Andrews continued, "We also have Vince Carter and Kendrick Perkins with us today. As the NBA playoff race heats up, we'll discuss the most current topics in the league." For the first 15 minutes, the program focused on general basketball topics. They covered the latest standings in the Eastern and Western Conferences, injuries, the MVP race, and trade rumors. Both Rivers and James shared their expert opinions on these topics, but did not directly interact with each other. James analyzed the Celtics' defensive schemes with the detail and insight of a coach, demonstrating his famous basketball IQ. Rivers offered thoughtful commentary on the development of young stars like Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, showing his eye for talent evaluation. To casual viewers, it might have seemed like a typical basketball discussion, but keen observers could sense both men were cautiously circling each other, waiting for the real confrontation to begin. Then, Andrews decided to address the inevitable topic. "Doc, in recent weeks you've made some comments on various programs about LeBron James's effect on team chemistry. Could you elaborate on these views?" There was a momentary silence in the studio. The cameras turned to Rivers, then quickly shifted to capture LeBron's reaction. Viewers at home could feel the shift in energy, as the polite basketball discussion suddenly transformed into something more personal and potentially explosive. Rivers leaned forward, folding his hands. "Yes, Malika, I always try to be honest, to say what I think is right, not what's popular. Based on what I've seen in my 20-plus years of coaching, LeBron James is a great player, perhaps the best ever, but I have some concerns about team chemistry." Kendrick Perkins immediately interjected. "What do you mean, Doc? We're talking about a player who's won championships with 4 different teams." Rivers continued, "LeBron James only thinks about himself and ruins team chemistry. The performance of those playing alongside him generally decreases. Coaches are constantly under pressure. You can see this in the statistics." The directness of Rivers' criticism was stunning, especially with James sitting just feet away. The studio seemed to freeze for a moment, as everyone absorbed the boldness of Rivers' statement. This wasn't the usual softened, qualified criticism that was typical in face-to-face confrontations. Rivers was doubling down on his most controversial take, directly to LeBron's face. Sitting at the other end of the studio, LeBron James smiled slightly upon hearing Rivers' words. This was his characteristic reaction. He preferred to stay calm rather than getting openly irritated. The slight smile didn't reach his eyes, however, which remained intensely focused on Rivers. "Do you really think that, Doc?" asked James, his voice calm but determined. The question hung in the air, both a challenge and an invitation for Rivers to either back down or escalate. Rivers nodded. "Statistics don't lie, LeBron. Players' performance drops when they're on your teams. We saw how Kyrie Irving flourished after you left. Anthony Davis moved away from his former dominant self when he started playing with you. Kevin Love transformed from a star to a role player while playing alongside you." Rivers was building his case methodically, citing specific examples that basketball fans would recognize. His voice carried the authority of someone who had both played and coached at the highest levels of the game. He wasn't just offering an opinion, he was presenting what he considered evidence. A fire flashed in James's eyes, but his tone was still measured. "Kyrie and I won a championship together, Doc. AD and I won a championship. Kevin Love and I played in 4 finals, won a championship. You're talking about statistics, but what about championships?" James's response went straight to the bottom line of basketball success: winning. His calm demeanor belied the forceful nature of his counter-argument. Individual statistics might change, but banners hang forever. Vince Carter intervened. "LeBron's right, Doc. Ultimately, the goal in basketball is to win championships. Individual statistics are nice, but trophies are more important." Carter's support for James's position added weight from a recently retired player respected by both men. His 22-year career gave him a unique perspective on what truly mattered in basketball success. Rivers spread his hands. "Of course championships are important, but in every team where LeBron is present, the entire system has to revolve around him. Coaches are forced to change their strategies, other players have to diminish their roles. This damages team chemistry in the long run." Rivers was standing his ground, expanding his argument to include the organizational impact of James' presence, not just the effect on individual players. His criticism was becoming more comprehensive and systemic. Malika Andrews sensed the discussion deepening and wanted to give James a proper platform to respond. "LeBron, how do you respond to these criticisms? You've frequently encountered such comments throughout your career." James leaned forward. "Listen, Doc, I've been in this league for 20 years. I've played on 4 different teams, won 4 championships. Throughout my career, More than 40 of my teammates have become all-stars. Because they played with me. Because I make them better, I elevate their statistics. Sometimes I sacrifice my own statistics for team success. James' response was both a defense of his career and a subtle challenge to Rivers' narrative. By citing the number of teammates who had become all-stars while playing with him, he was directly countering the notion that he diminished those around him. Rivers shook his head. Look, LeBron, no one is questioning your talent. But the fact is, building a team around you limits the potential of other players. Your ball dominance, your playing style, the tension in the studio was reaching a breaking point. Rivers and James were now directly challenging each other's perspectives, with neither showing signs of backing down. Viewers across America were glued to their screens, witnessing a rare moment of unfiltered confrontation between two basketball giants. Just as the discussion was about to heat up further, someone from the production team rushed into the studio and handed a tablet to program host Malika Andrews. This unexpected interruption momentarily broke the tension, as all eyes turned to the staff member hurrying across the set, a rare breach of on-air protocol that signaled something significant was happening. Andrews took the tablet, looked at the screen, and her facial expression suddenly changed from professional interest to genuine surprise. She looked up at the camera, then back at Rivers and James, clearly processing how to handle whatever information she had just received. "Gentlemen, before we continue with the broadcast," she said, looking at the tablet in front of her, "we just received a video from an anonymous viewer. This footage shows Doc Rivers talking about LeBron during a private meeting with 76ers players." There was silence in the studio. Rivers' facial expression suddenly changed, his brows furrowed, his eyes filled with concern. The confident demeanor he had maintained throughout the heated discussion instantly evaporated, replaced by what appeared to be genuine alarm. LeBron leaned forward curiously, trying to look at the tablet in Andrews' hand, his expression a mixture of surprise and interest. "What video is this?" asked Rivers, his voice more tense than before. The shift in his tone was dramatic, from the assured delivery of his criticism to a defensive, almost worried inquiry. Andrews looked at the tablet once more. "The footage comes from the Philadelphia 76ers training facility. The timestamp shows the middle of last season. You're giving a speech to your team and talking about LeBron James." The cameras captured Rivers shifting uncomfortably in his seat. For the first time in the program, he appeared genuinely unsettled, his media-trained composure cracking slightly. "I held hundreds of team meetings during my time coaching the 76ers. Without knowing the context, he was attempting to preemptively contextualize whatever was about to be revealed, a classic damage control strategy that suggested he knew the contents might contradict his public stance. Kendrick Perkins, sensing a potential vindication for LeBron, eagerly interjected, "Come on, Doc, let's see the video. You just made some pretty harsh comments about LeBron. If this video confirms your views, there shouldn't be a problem showing it, right?" Perkins' challenge was direct, putting Rivers in a difficult position. To object to showing the video would suggest he had something to hide, undermining his earlier confident assertions about James. Rivers hesitated, visibly wrestling with his options. "This must be a private team meeting. I don't know how such footage was leaked, but..." His reluctance was telling. The man who moments ago had been boldly criticizing LeBron James on national television was now seemingly trying to prevent the broadcast of his own words from a team meeting. Maintaining her professional demeanor, Malika Andrews asked, "Doc, do you give us permission to broadcast this video? It might be interesting for our viewers." Andrews was handling the unexpected situation with journalistic precision, seeking explicit permission while making it clear that the content was relevant to their discussion. The ball was now firmly in Rivers' court. Rivers felt cornered. Refusing would make it seem like he had something to hide, potentially damaging his credibility even without viewers seeing the actual content. "Fine, show it," he finally said, with obvious tension in his voice. His reluctant consent suggested he was well aware that what was about to be revealed might contradict his public stance. Andrews signaled to the production team, "Let's bring this video to the screen." The monitors in the studio went dark, then the familiar image of the Philadelphia 76ers training facility appeared. The video quality wasn't perfect, likely secretly recorded by a player or team member on a smartphone, but clearly showed Doc Rivers addressing a group of 76ers players. Joel Embiid, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and others sat in a circle, listening to Rivers. The authenticity of the footage was undeniable. This was genuinely Rivers speaking to his team in what he believed was a private setting. "Look, guys," Rivers was saying in the video, his voice clearly audible. "If we want to win a championship, talent alone isn't enough. It requires chemistry, sacrifice, and leadership. Rivers continued his speech on screen. I'm going to give you an example. LeBron James. Why is he one of the most successful players in NBA history? Because he's not just interested in filling the stat sheet. He's a team player, a leader. He makes his teammates better. There was a shocked silence in the studio. Rivers' face reddened and LeBron's eyes widened. The contradiction between Rivers' public criticism and his private praise of James couldn't have been more stark. The very qualities Rivers had just criticized James for lacking, being a team player, making teammates better, were exactly what he was praising in the private team meeting. The Rivers in the video continued, "We need to play like LeBron James. He does what the team needs every night, sometimes scoring, sometimes assists, sometimes defense. In my career I've never seen a superstar as selfless and team-oriented as him. He improves team chemistry. He's a perfect leader." Every word from the video Rivers seemed to directly contradict what he had just said on air minutes earlier. The contrast was so dramatic that it almost seemed like two different people speaking. In public, Rivers had claimed LeBron ruins team chemistry, while in private he told his team that James improves team chemistry and was a perfect leader. In the video, Rivers turned to a whiteboard and wrote, "James-style leadership with bullet points. Team first, selfless, consistent every night, high basketball IQ." These points represented the exact opposite of the self-centered, team chemistry-destroying player Rivers had described on air. Every team with LeBron James becomes a championship contender, Rivers continued in the video, because he thinks not just about himself, but about the team. The entire system may revolve around him, but that's not a bad thing, because he uses that system for everyone's benefit. We need to adopt this mindset too. The video ended there, leaving the studio in complete silence. The cameras captured the shocked expression on Doc Rivers' face, a mixture of embarrassment and defensiveness. LeBron James looked surprised, but a slight smile had also appeared on his face. It wasn't a smile of mockery or triumph, but rather the satisfied expression of someone whose true character had just been vindicated in the most unexpected way. Vince Carter and Kendrick Perkins exchanged glances of disbelief. The production team behind the cameras stood frozen, recognizing they were witnessing an unprecedented moment in sports television. Millions of viewers at home were undoubtedly having similar reactions, watching one of the most dramatic real-time exposures of contradictory positions ever broadcast on a major sports network. Malika Andrews broke the silence, handling the explosive situation with remarkable poise. "Doc, it appears that what you said about LeBron James in your private team meeting contradicts what you just said on our program. What do you have to say about this?" Her question was direct but professional, giving Rivers the opportunity to explain the glaring discrepancy between his public criticism and private praise of James. The spotlight was squarely on Rivers now, and his response would likely define how viewers judged his credibility going forward. The blood had drained from Rivers' face. He was clearly caught off guard, unprepared for the public revelation of his private comments. These are things said in a different context," he said hesitantly. "As a coach, I use different approaches to motivate my players." His explanation seemed weak, an attempt to justify what appeared to be a clear case of saying one thing in public and another in private. The contrast was too stark to be explained away as merely different motivational techniques. Kendrick Perkins, never one to hold back, started laughing. "Different context? Doc, in the video you're praising LeBron to the skies, you call him a perfect leader who improves team chemistry. But now you're saying the exact opposite." Perkins' reaction expressed what many viewers were likely thinking, that Rivers' attempt to explain away the contradiction was inadequate and somewhat disingenuous. Vince Carter added, "This is interesting, Doc. In a private team meeting you're showing LeBron as an example, but in public you're saying he ruins team chemistry. There's a big contradiction between these two views." Carter's more measured tone still conveyed the same fundamental point. Rivers' public and private assessments of James were diametrically opposed, and this discrepancy demanded a more substantial explanation. Rivers went on the defensive. "Look, coaching is a complex job. You need to deliver different messages in different situations. I may have emphasized LeBron's positive aspects to motivate my players, but that doesn't change my professional opinion about his overall effect on team dynamics." Rivers was attempting to reconcile the irreconcilable, to suggest that both his harsh public criticism and effusive private praise could somehow both represent his professional opinion. The studio atmosphere remained tense, with everyone waiting to see how LeBron would respond to this stunning revelation. LeBron James had been watching silently until then, processing the unexpected vindication of his team-first approach. Now it was his turn to speak. Everyone in the studio and millions of viewers at home were wondering what he would say. Would he attack Rivers for his apparent hypocrisy? Would he gloat over being proven right? Or would he take a different approach? "You know," James said in a calm voice, "I've been in this league for 20 years. I've seen a lot, heard a lot. But today you really surprised me, Doc." James' tone wasn't angry or triumphant. It was measured and almost philosophical, the voice of someone taking a broader view of the situation rather than focusing on personal vindication. Rivers opened his mouth to respond, but James continued, holding up a hand to indicate he wasn't finished. "I'm used to people saying one thing in public and something else behind closed doors. That's part of the business we're in. But what surprises me about you is how contradictory these two different messages are. Either I'm a selfish player who ruins team chemistry, or I'm a perfect leader who improves team chemistry. I can't be both." James's point cut to the heart of the matter, not just that Rivers had contradicted himself, but that the contradiction was so complete that it called into question the sincerity of either position. Rivers interjected, "LeBron, that's not fair. That video was taken in a specific context." James raised his hand again. "Let me finish, Doc. You have the right to judge or criticize me. That's part of basketball. But be consistent. If you say one thing in public and something else in private meetings, your credibility suffers." There was a tense silence in the studio. Rivers lowered his eyes, seemingly crushed under the weight of James's words. The dynamics had completely shifted from the beginning of the segment, where Rivers had been the aggressor and James on the defensive. Now James occupied the moral high ground, speaking truth to someone whose own words had undermined his credibility. Malika Andrews, sensing the need to move the conversation forward, tried to salvage the situation. "This is certainly an interesting situation. Doc, what is your true opinion about LeBron? What you said in the private meeting, or what you said here today?" Andrews' question was both journalistically sound and dramatically compelling, forcing Rivers to declare which of his contradictory positions represented his actual beliefs. Rivers took a deep breath, visibly wrestling with how to respond. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled slightly, not a smile of amusement, but of resignation, the expression of someone who realizes they've been caught in an untenable position. "I guess I've been caught," he said, with unexpected honesty. "The truth is, LeBron James is one of the best players basketball has ever seen. I've always admired his leadership, his team-oriented approach. What I said in the private meeting was my true opinion." Rivers' admission was stunning, a complete reversal from his position at the beginning of the segment. Instead of continuing to defend his contradictory statements, he had chosen to acknowledge that his private praise, not his public criticism, represented his genuine assessment of James. Everyone in the studio looked at Rivers in astonishment. This honest confession was an unexpected turn that changed the entire tenor of the conversation. "Then why do you speak differently in public?" asked Vince Carter, asking the question that was surely on viewers' minds. Rivers shrugged, his body language suggesting surrender. "In the basketball world, you sometimes take on different roles. As a coach, I need to protect my team and my players. Sometimes we express different views in the media to create discussion, to attract attention. Maybe I shouldn't have been so open." Rivers was pulling back the curtain on the performance aspect of sports media, acknowledging that his critical comments about James had been more about generating attention and controversy than expressing his genuine basketball assessment. LeBron nodded slightly at Rivers' honest confession, a gesture of recognition rather than forgiveness. "I appreciate that, Doc. Thank you for your honesty. There's a lot of game playing in the basketball world. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish what's real and what's for show." James's response showed his maturity and perspective. Rather than rubbing Rivers' nose in his contradiction, he was using the moment to highlight a broader issue about authenticity in sports discourse. Malika Andrews recognized the significance of this moment of truth. "Doc, would you now share your true opinion about LeBron James in front of the cameras, with complete honesty?" Andrews was giving Rivers an opportunity for redemption, a chance to publicly state his genuine assessment after his contradictory positions had been exposed. Rivers hesitated for a moment, then looked at LeBron. "LeBron James is not just a basketball player, he's a phenomenon. His leadership ability, team-oriented approach, and consistent performance every night are unmatched. If I had a chance to build a team, LeBron would always be my first choice. I apologize for speaking differently in public." This complete reversal, from criticizing James as a team chemistry destroyer to praising him as his first choice for building a team, represented a total capitulation and acknowledgement of his earlier insincerity. LeBron extended his hand and shook hands with Rivers. "That's all you needed to say, Coach." The tension in the studio suddenly dissolved. Unexpectedly, a moment of peace was occurring between the two basketball figures, a reconciliation based on honesty rather than maintained pretense. Kendrick Perkins, still processing the dramatic turnaround, interjected, "Doc, why did you make negative comments about LeBron on ESPN and other media? Why did you advocate something you didn't really believe in?" Perkins' question went to the heart of the broader issue: the incentives for insincerity in sports media, the premium placed on controversial takes rather than genuine analysis. Rivers answered honestly, "Basketball media feeds on controversy. Sometimes as insiders who know the game, we take positions to fuel these controversies. Speaking critically about LeBron made me more visible in the media. I was invited to programs, I found opportunities to speak. Was it right? Probably not, but it's a reflection of how sports media works." Rivers' candid explanation provided a rare glimpse behind the curtain of sports media, an acknowledgement that commentators and analysts often stake out controversial positions not because they genuinely believe them, but because controversy generates attention and opportunities. Malika Andrews recognized the broader implications of this revelation. This situation raises interesting questions about the culture of debate in sports media. How much is real? How much is for show? How can we as viewers tell the difference? Andrews was elevating the discussion from a personal confrontation between Rivers and James to a more substantive examination of media culture and the incentives for manufactured controversy. Vince Carter thoughtfully responded, "Most of the debates you see on sports programs are exaggerated. As former players and coaches, we sometimes express polarizing views to attract attention. But as we've seen today, public comments don't always reflect real thoughts." Carter's insider perspective confirmed Rivers' admission, suggesting that the problem was systemic rather than individual, a media ecosystem that rewards strong, controversial takes over nuanced, genuine analysis. LeBron James had the final word. "I have a message for basketball fans. Don't believe everything you hear. Not every debate you see in the media is real. Sometimes it's done for show, sometimes for ratings. What happens on the court tells the real story." James's closing statement was both a caution to viewers and a reassertion of the primacy of actual performance over media narratives, a fitting conclusion to a segment that had exposed the gap between public persona and private assessment. As the program was ending, Malika Andrews made her closing remarks. "Today on NBA Today, we truly experienced an unforgettable moment. Doc Rivers' private meeting video revealed the difference between perceptions and realities in sports media. We thank LeBron James and Doc Rivers for their honest sharing." As the cameras turned off, Rivers and James stood up and shook hands cordially. The Cold War between the two basketball legends had unexpectedly ended on live television, replaced by a moment of authenticity that transcended the manufactured controversies of sports media. After the broadcast, social media practically exploded. Hashtags like Rivers exposed, LeBron vindicated, and NBA media truth instantly became trending topics. ESPN, Fox Sports, and other sports channels prepared special programs with titles like Doc Rivers' Two Faces and Fake Debates in Sports Media. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver made a statement about the incident. "As the NBA, we encourage sincere and honest discussions. Today's event highlights the need for more transparency in sports media." LeBron James shared just one message on his social media account: "Truth always comes out. Thanks." This short message was shared and liked millions of times. In a press conference the next day, Doc Rivers assessed the ESPN incident. "I apologize for what happened yesterday. Some things I said publicly about LeBron James didn't reflect my true thoughts. In sports media, we sometimes take different positions to create debate, but that shouldn't mean we're not being honest. My respect for LeBron is endless, and his contributions to basketball are undeniable." A week after this event, at the game between the Phoenix Suns and Los Angeles Lakers, Rivers and James met at center court before the game. The two basketball figures were seen chatting cordially. This image was seen as a message of peace in the basketball world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. What do you think about this topic? Please write in the comments below. See you in the next video.